Hello, everyone, and welcome to my interview where I talk with individuals who have intuitive psychic abilities. And my name is Nancy Rebecca. I am a registered nurse. I have worked full-time as a psychic healer, as a clairvoyant for 25 years now, long before it was popular. And I've gone through several phases of kind of coming out of the closet, really normalizing my skill and ability. I teach intuitive psychic development. And what I really feel is as we're going through this expansive state in the world, many people are finding that they have intuitive abilities, but that doesn't mean that you know what to do with them. And so that's why I wanted to do these interviews with individuals who are working with their abilities to just help you have kind of that inner insight, that view about what that is like for people who work full time with their skill. So today I would like to welcome Kimiko Kawabori, and welcome, Kimiko. And how long is it? When did I first meet you? What year was that?
I think it might have been 2013.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like I've known you forever. So thank you so much for joining me today in this interview process. Um, yeah, because each person I've interviewed, their experiences are a little different. And I know that we're going to find a lot of people out there who are watching this today who'll be able to relate to your experiences and what you've gone through. So what I know about you, when I met you in 2013, you had made an appointment with me to come in for a private session. And I can still remember that session where I could see you were just this bright light. I could see that you had a lot of skill and ability, but I could also see that you were very terrified of your skill and your ability. And I remember you telling me that you did go see other psychics, other intuitives to help kind of guide you. But I could clearly see that your spirit was really wanting you to start kind of tapping into your own abilities and trusting your own inner intuition. So the only other thing I want to say about that is when I had my out of body experience, it was frightening 25 years ago. And I'm fortunate that I was able to talk to my parents about it. And then my mother was able to share with me that when she was young, she also had her own experiences. So she was able to normalize it a little bit. So I'm curious about you. What were your sensitivities as a child? Because I know that you had them. And what was that like with your parents?
Yeah, thank you. I could see things, I could see I thought it was normal. It was just another like layer of the world. And I just thought it was kind of just something that happened. But then when I was in kindergarten, Sunday school, I learned from a teacher. I still remember the classroom. It was like time stopped. And she said, people who know or can see ghosts and energies are possessed by the devil and they're going to hell.
Oh
So
my
in that
goodness.
moment, I was like, okay, I'm possessed by the devil. This is what I can do. I can see ghosts and energies. And then I was like, I'm never telling anyone because then the gig's up. I'm going to hell. It'll be an announcement. Hello, I'm a bad person. I'm going to go to hell. So
Wow.
it was really frightening. And I really started disassociating. I'm a very professional disassociator.
You've got that down pat.
I got it so good because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want anyone to know about this. So it was really frightening. And I was able to disassociate pretty well. There were a few times when I just couldn't. And it was just, yeah, terrifying. And I, over the years, I finally, probably within maybe only the last 3 years, I've been able to talk to my parents about this because I want them, I just am really sick of hiding from them. I did that my whole life. Also, I think it's very Japanese culture to know Japanese parent dreams of their child. being like, oh, I can see ghosts and I can talk to the dead and I'm going to be an ancestral healer, right? That's like not exactly on the list of like good things for their children to come into. So
Uh-huh.
I was sick of hiding. So we are in a good place now, but it took
Yeah.
me a lot to get there.
What
Over
was
the
it
years, it
like
was
for you to, yeah, to say, I want to have a conversation about this?
it was so it was so scary, but and I can't I think also because I'm adopted, a lot of me, and maybe this, I think this is an adoptee thing, is we test our parents, like, are you okay? Are you going to give me up again? Kind of a thing. Like, is this going to be the thing? So it was around, I think around maybe 2013 when I first started seeing you, I'd gotten another reading and there was a big story about the difference between my adoptive parents now and my birth parents.
Mhm.
And it really blew my mind, but I wanted to tell my parents because it was kind of like a, well, if you can handle this, then like this is what the kind of stuff that I'm into. Can you handle this? Are you gonna get rid of me? Like, it was kind of testing the
Wow.
waters. And so
Wow.
after describing that story to them, it just opened things up and I started telling them more because and then yeah, I was just tired of really hiding and um, being scared that I was like, even as an adult in my, what was I, in my 30s then, like gonna be given away. Like,
Wow. 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 Really different perspective. So again, when I said you came to me privately, I could see right away that you really had psychic ability. So if I, if we all have intuitive psychic ability. So I just want to say that, and I do teach that, but yours was very sharp. It was very direct. It was very clean. It was very clear right off the bat. And it was almost like you were going to need to learn how to manage these if you wanted to have the life that you were going to have in life, kind of like on your path. But what you said in kindergarten, you could see things, but what are your abilities that are, in addition to being human, that you work with? And I talk about in terms of like clear sentience, clear feeling, clear healing, hearing, clear seeing, and clear knowing. What are your abilities?
primarily it was seeing until I took your psychic mastery program. Uh, because then when I took your psychic mastery program, I learned how to manage being able to see that I don't need to see all the time. And I even think I said to you one time, I was like, just learning how to turn it off when I need to was worth the price of admission. Because it just was such a relief to not have everything flying around all the time, especially since by the like after meeting you, everything started really flooding back because I'd been so good at disassociating and turning things off and just not, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just disconnecting. So by the time I took psychic mastery, I was ready to go back and see what it was all about. And so after I started to try to shut down the visuals, I started to do more knowingness. That's what started to come in because I wanted to still get information. I'm like, I don't need to see all this. I'm good.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring this up because just this morning in my meditation, I was talking to my higher self and my ancestors, and I said, as a clairvoyant, I can see in the spirit world just like you. At the same time, I can see in the physical world, and it's exhausting. I mean, it's overstimulating just in the world right now anyway. And then when you can also see the spirit world, it's way too much stimulation. And so I will find that if I shift to just knowing, it's much easier on the eyes, if I can put it that way, much easier. So, so you're said seeing, and then what else are your abilities?
I think
You said knowingness and seeing.
knowingness and seeing, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And also just connecting to the dead, I don't know. That's just been what I can do. And after taking your classes, I really learned how to manage that. It doesn't have to be a free for all on me. Because
Yeah.
one thing I learned from you, and I continue to learn as from other people who are able to see the dead, is that the dead don't come to you unless they know you can see them,
Right.
right? So when I learned that, it was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I get that now.
Yeah, yeah. And that you can also not only learn to manage your abilities in your own aura, but you can also be able to say, you're too close. If you're talking to the spirit world, you're too close. I can't talk to you right now. I will talk to you later. Like you learn how to engage, that you get to set boundaries. You get to be in charge of your experience.
Yes, totally.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I do also know that step by step, you have, like when you talk about that living two different worlds, you've got your intuitive world, but then you have your regular world that you step into that you don't share with. But I do know that you've been taking some real active steps on coming out a bit more and starting off with, sharing it with your parents as well. What is that journey for you? How do you feel as you keep coming out more and more and more and devoting your life to your practice?
It is not easy. Like, I did not choose this, right? Like, it is not something that I'm like, I don't know. It just feels like it fell on me. You know what I mean? Like, it just felt like I can't not do it.
Yeah,
And all my life, I've wanted to help people. I'm like, I just want to help people. I just didn't know what it would look like. But once I started taking your classes and started talking to others and hearing about their kind of struggles around managing their energy and, confusion around, especially for me, like as an adoptee, confusion around who are my ancestors, and then where did my energetic, psychic, visual gifts come from?
right.
Is it from my, who? I don't even know.
Yeah,
And I don't know if I'll ever be able to talk to anyone to see which line it came from, like in the human form. So it's been a big, yeah, I didn't choose this.
yeah, yeah. I like to use the word hijacked. I would often get kind of angry and say, look, you don't, like I remember one day, here I am in my house, and, we were restoring this house that's 130 years old. And there was a crew of people that had restored our windows. And I'm just working at my desk. And suddenly this male spirit comes in and said, you need to talk to my friend, and he's in trouble right now. He's in trouble. You need to talk to him. I'm afraid. And I'm like, I'm working on a project right now. Like, you can't just hijack me. But he wouldn't, he was relentless. And I'm like, look, there's a crew of 15 people restoring my windows. Who am I going to start? How am I going to know who it is I need to talk to? I opened the door to my office, and there was a man standing right there working on one of the grouting things or something. And it was like, so spirit literally put him outside my office door. And then I said, hi, I'm Nancy. And I don't think you know this about me, but I'm a psychic medium. And there is a friend of yours that is coming to me that really wants me to give you a message. And he's just kind of wide-eyed. But what happened was, once I delivered the message, he was just like, oh, okay. And he went on about his business. And then the spirit who I gave the message for left. But I talk about that as being hijacked. I will say that the man came back 2 weeks later, and he asked to talk to me. He had been sober from drugs and alcohol for about 3 years, and his mind was starting to, he was going to relapse. And if he relapsed, he would probably not survive it. And so that message came right at the time his friend on the other side, who had died of a drug overdose, wanted to come through and have me stop. So yeah, that kind of life, it can be a bit rough, but Spirit's always reminding me, you came to the earth with these gifts and abilities to help people. You agreed to do this, so kind of stop complaining. All right, so I do want to talk about this ancestor piece that you are bringing up. And here, my question to you is, so what I know working with students, they will develop intuitively, and then they may choose to develop psychically, which psychic means the breath of the soul. It's much more precision oriented. So that's what you did. You learned how to manage your field, and then you learned how to take your abilities and be more precise in how you worked with them. And then it's a pretty natural progression. My sense is to start working with the ancestors, but you started working with them for a different reason. And you've mentioned this because you were adopted. The other thing I didn't know about Japanese culture is it's very ancestral oriented. So would you mind spending some time on that and kind of bringing all those pieces together for people out there listening, especially in the Asian community who also honor their ancestors?
Right. Well, unfortunately, I grew up, I mean, it sounds rude to say, but okay, I'll say it differently. I grew up very Christian, and so I didn't have a lot of the Japanese culture pieces around ancestral worship, because that just, you worship God and you don't worship your ancestors. But every summer we did go to it's called Ubonodori, and it's this Japanese ancestral worship festival every summer. And we did that because my grandparents, their first language was Japanese. So they had a big Japanese community that they would all be able to see. And so it was a big time for them to get to see their friends and to hang out and to speak Japanese and to be around Japanese and to, just be around their culture, even though they were Christian, and they all became Christian once they got to the States. So I knew of the ancestors every summer. I was reminded of ancestors because I knew secondhand kind of that it was ancestor worship. And I was always like quite, like it just felt like who are my ancestors? Like who do I worship? Do I worship the ones I don't know, or do I worship these grandparents and their lines here, but I'm not their blood? Do they even consider me family? Am I
Well,
their
because you were
family?
adopted, that
Uh-huh.
added a different element of confusion.
Totally, exactly. And then I was like, I think my blood ancestors are Japanese. My parents tell me my blood is Japanese, but I don't know. How do they know? So it just like it was just so in my head
Oh, wow.
around it. Like, ugh, like I don't get this. And so that was another kind of disassociation. Like I was excited to be with like the culture, because it was a big thing. We would go for a dance practice once for a week before the ceremony, which was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it was this big
Oh, okay.
thing. And uh I was just like, ooh, like I had so many feels about it.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to learn, like I lived in Japan for a year because I didn't understand, was I really raised in a very culturally Japanese household? I thought I was. My parents are third generation Japanese American, even though they grew up in very strong Japanese culture. Um, and so I was raised fourth generation Japanese American. So I've tried to piece a lot of things together. I've tried to study Japanese off and on my entire life, and it's never really stuck, but I'm doing it again. And this time I'm going to make it stick. I'm so sick of like learning the same kanji. I'm like, how many times can I learn this same freaking kanji? Like, can we just do it? Like, I just got to do it. I just got to stick to it.
And
So I'm
what is a
going
kanji?
Japanese characters.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So
Okay.
I've just, yeah, I'm like, oh my God, I've learned this 4 times now.
So what do you know? So in your ancestral line, we always talk about, your maternal side, your paternal side, and your, maternal, paternal grandparents. But when you're adopted, you actually have not simply like 4 lines of ancestors, you have 8 lines of ancestors. So again, it's a whole nother level of complexity. So what's that like for you and have you been able to integrate that, or is that still a big journey for you?
Yeah, well, I first came honestly to my ancestors with a lot of anger. And I remember in your classes, you would talk about the ancestral connection, and you would talk about these things. And again, it would just bring up all that, like, which ones do I connect to? How do I do this? And everyone in class was like, oh my gosh, like, I connected to my grandmother's mother's mother's mother, and I'd be like, awesome. But then I'm like, I don't know if I connected to anyone because I was so in my head about who
Oh,
I could even connect to. And so yes, I have connected to all 8 of my ancestral lines. And it was a really different experience connecting to my blood versus my adoptive lines, because my bloodlines, I just didn't know anything about them. So I just had to trust, like, okay, sure. And I was honestly pretty angry at them, like, you guys had a role in giving me up for adoption. And I'm one of those
oh,
adoptees who have never had like adoptees call it in the fog, where you don't kind of really think about being adopted. And for me, it was just like a searing, like, knife wound every day. Just it
wow.
was that's just how it was for me. And even though my parents are amazing, it's just like the adoptee, the primal wound, as Nancy Verrier says about her, uh, how adoptees experience
Mhm.
being adopted. So I was really mad at them, like, why did you put me in this situation? You're supposed to take care of me, like, come on.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then and then with my adopted ancestors, it was like, okay, am I really part of this family? Do you consider me family? Like, and
Wow.
I'm part of this family, but I am totally not like any one of you. I'm like the black sheep. So you brought me into this family to be the black sheep. Like, I don't know if I want to talk to any of you people.
But you were compelled.
Oh, but I couldn't stop, because I think I wanted to know. I was so curious. How does it work for me?
Yeah,
Do I have ancestors? Can I connect to them? How does
yeah,
that work? And I kept at it. I just kept trying because I wanted to figure it out. And I was also incredibly desperate, because as I got older, I did some searching for my birth parents. And the more I searched, the more I was like, ooh, I don't know if I'm ever going to find these people. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to meet them in person. I'm not sure about that. So as that realization started coming out, I started getting more desperate. I got to at least connect them energetically,
yeah.
ancestrally, or
Yes,
else I will just lose I need something
exactly.
here. I need
Exactly.
something.
And that was that question of, when I say you were compelled, because there is a soul connection to all of those lines. And if you were angry and not able to connect, but there's that part of your spirit that was like, you have to do this. You have to do this. So as you continue to connect with the vibe, the frequency of those lines, because they can be dramatically different in their frequency, how did you start to feel inside as you
Hmm.
began to heal those?
Well, it was kind of a two-part thing, because I spent so much time being mad at them. Once they started showing up, I was like, oh God, like, I'm sorry. It was like this big, uh, I had to ask for forgiveness for how terrible I treated them.
Oh,
But then I started to realize that all the different ways that they had always been there, they would show me different, like, symbols and
mhm.
things that they had shown me over the years. And so it made me feel more connected to myself, and more like, okay, there is something that I'm connected to. It's not just, I didn't just get like kicked out, into some random
Yeah.
universe. Like, I have like roots somewhere, like there are origins. There's something underneath me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I will often say, and I do say this. So if I have a client where they'll say, oh, my husband's really skeptical, or my friend or my parents really are very skeptical. One thing I've learned in 25 years, the bigger the skeptic, the more the ability that you have, that you're just terrified of it. So in this kind of leap, of you being like really angry, and I didn't want to do this with the ancestors, which are just a loving, supportive, of spiritual beings on the other side that are here to support you and help you. The bigger you resist, the stronger there is something there for you. So
Yeah.
you then took it to another level. And I don't know if anyone out there who's watching this video has heard of The book is it Ancestor Medicine or Ancestral Medicine?
Ancestral medicine.
Ancestral Medicine by Daniel Foor. It's spelled Foor. You actually have been working with him. Has it been almost a year now?
It's been about, yeah, a little over a year.
And so it sounds like you're making a career out of this. You really have a passion to working with the ancestors, but specifically adoptees, people who have been adopted. So tell us a little bit more about what that experience is, because you chose to jump in with both feet.
Yeah, I knew that there was something there with the ancestors. I just needed, and I like Daniel's structure, how just crazy thorough it is. And so I applied for his practitioner training program. I got in. I am now one of his practitioners. And it's been the craziest, wild ride because his his teachings, his lessons hit on so many levels, the cultural level, racial level. He looks at the blessings of the line, the burdens of the line. And when I started to look at blessings, burdens, and then the antidote for those burdens, I started really recognizing patterns within myself that I was like, oh, that's where that comes from. That's my birth mother's line or whatever.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I know, again, I didn't feel like I chose this, but I feel like there's so many other people who don't know their bloodlines and who
Right.
can relate to being like, who are my ancestors? And
Yeah.
I might not ever meet them. So can I even talk to them?
Yeah.
And so I want to help others connect.
So it's definitely you are spiritually called. Why does Spirit want you to work specifically with those? I know that you'll work with everyone, but Spirit is calling you to work with those who have been adopted, who may not know, you know, where they kind of fit in the world. Like what is Spirit specifically asking you to do? What is it that you know that you can assist those who have been adopted? How can you assist them?
Yeah. The word that kept coming through when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life was connection, is making those connections. There's, I think, a lot of people, especially adoptees, we feel very disconnected from ourselves, from our family, from our land, from our bloodlines, just really disconnected. And so this ancestral healing work, and actually your work too, the energy readings, helps people connect to themselves in
Oh,
a really beautiful way. The energy work that you do helps people see themselves in that energetic way and see the blocks that they have to living their biggest life or whatever they want to do. And the ancestral works helps them connect to their blood and also to the land, to learn, where
yeah.
did you come from? What land? What was that land like? What was the culture that you came from? Especially since so many adoptees are transracially or international adoptees, they're really separated. And so there's a human condition of being separated that I really want to help remedy.
Yeah, yeah, because I had wanted, because you were adopted, you were Japanese and you were adopted by Japanese parents, but that's not always the case
Right.
with everyone. So I know that there are so many levels. I could talk to you all day about this because it's just so fascinating. But before we start to wrap up, it's like there's a lot of dolphin energy that comes in around you. And it's almost like I can see dolphins kind of swimming around me as I'm talking to you, and I cannot just ignore that. So what is this connection that you have with this very high level dimensional dolphin frequency?
Yeah. So the last name Kawabori, it's from a town in Japan called Taiji, Taiji, and it's where the documentary The Cove was filmed. And The Cove was a documentary just documenting dolphin slaughter in Japan.
Oh,
They, for months, I don't know, 6 months at a time, they have boats in Taiji that literally round up tons and tons of dolphins, and then they slaughter them, or they take them and they sell them to different aquariums. It's culturally Japanese is the argument. My family, the Kawaboris, started in Taiji, so we have our family burial plot, and that's, that's everyone gets buried
okay.
in one, burial plot, and that's in
Oh,
Taiji. And we got our name in the 1700s. Most Japanese people got their name in the 1800s. So in the 1700s, either you were like like samurai or some lord, big lord, or you were a landowner. So we were not samurai. We were not a big like lord of an area. So naturally, like my relatives in Japan, they're like, we owned land. And so they owned land in Taiji, and that's how they got their name. I don't really know exactly what they did with the land, but they know that we were associated with massive land ownership. And
wow. So the
that's how they got our
dolphin
name.
connection then is from that area. But it's beautiful as I'm watching these dolphins just moving through this conversation. So do you work with dolphins?
Oh gosh, I've done a lot of work with them, dolphins, whales, just because I
Oh,
know that history. So I couldn't just be like, oh, I'm from that land. My name is from that land. I'm just going to ignore what happened with the Cove. I'm not going to do anything about it. I did a lot of work with them to try to apologize, make right, and
oh.
yeah.
And then how did you feel as you healed some of the ancestral trauma around kind of making amends to the dolphins? Could you feel the difference as you began to heal that?
I could. It made me feel a lot lighter, and it made me feel like so much less guilt and shame that I always really carried around with me. And yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
quite understand where it came from. But then when I saw that, I was like, well, yeah, of course, that's going to be a big part.
Well, clearly you've done a lot of healing around that because the dolphins are just really
Mhm.
celebrating you. But it's more than that. It's almost like they are your ancestors. Like there's a kinship. I
Yeah.
can see that kinship that they have with you. So I think as a clairvoyant, if anybody saw you walking down the street, there'd be all these dolphins around you. So that's super cool. So, if someone, I know that there's a lot of people, I know that you do regular readings. I know that you have a new website. Is it public? Is it launched yet?
It is, yes, yes. It's originswithin.com.
Originswithin.com, and I will
Yep.
definitely include the link when this with this video so that people can go to your site and take a look. And then are you doing primary readings, ancestral readings? What is the main focus if people wanted to have a session with you?
Yeah, it's either. I'm open to either. I'm open to, some people are like, I don't know what I need more, ancestral work or, reading. And so we kind of just talk about it, and I'm open to
Nice,
anything.
nice. Oh, I just love you, Kimmy. It
I
was
love you too.
it was great talking to you today. And I know that your nature is by nature, you are kind of an introvert,
Oh my God,
but
yes.
you're such a great speaker. And I really hope that you will explore, yeah, just telling your story more and more and more. And because I know that we can all do a lot of healing from that. So thank you again, Kimiko, for
Thank you, Nancy.
coming on today. I loved it. And I can't wait to see all the great things that you are going, all the great ways that you're going to be answering the call of your soul moving forward.
Thanks, Nancy.
All right. Take care.